Hello, Pete. Happy day to you, sir. How's it going?
Very nice to see you, Mark. I told you off air, but I have a cool backdrop because I stole Tony Gentlecore's office, and
That's
it's a nice
fantastic.
change of pace.
I also just love that we have the spirit of Tony Gentlecore will bless us and haunt us in this podcast. Thank goodness.
The spirit. Can I tell you about Tony's office? You can't see it on camera. He has a
Oh boy.
Wu Tang is forever.
I assume is it full of like toys and action figures? I assume.
He's got one of those like political campaign signs that says Wu Tang is forever, presidents or
Yeah.
temporary 2020 on the
Yeah.
wall above my shoulder, along with an Alicia Keys poster. So it's
Yeah.
it's just Tony on a wall.
Yep, that sounds perfect. That sounds perfect. All right. Well, it's not as interesting as Tony on the wall today. We are going to talk about saving a ton of money going into this next year. So I want to talk about this because there's some of our listeners, I hope, listened very carefully to our Black Friday episode, and they were able. Celestia, I I need you to.
Don't cut this.
Sorry, Rosemary. Do you want to jump up and down? Okay, you can jump up and down, but you have to be quiet. You cannot talk to me anymore. Okay. Okay, because I'm recording something. Okay, well, I don't know if Rosemary cut it, but I have a 3.5-year-old jumping up and down on the bed because there's no daycare today, which is distracting but delightful. So I wanted to
I
have a
want to
conversation
request
today.
not don't
Yeah,
cut
we
it.
can, we can, yeah, or you can
This
cut
is
the
real
requisite
life
amount.
shit.
Yes, we just a 25-minute podcast and me being like, "Yeah, I'm on a podcast right now." So today we wanted to talk about a way to save money at year end. Some of our listeners, no doubt, took action after the Black Friday podcast Michael and I did. A lot of members of our community have made a lot of year end money, which we like because they ran really strong promotions and they collected a lot of revenue. And that is awesome. Now, of course, the downside is whether you had a big haul from Black Friday or maybe you're just having a very profitable year, is you're, of course, going to owe some taxes on that money, right? And this is to be expected. But part of the game of business ownership is, are there ways we can legally and ethically minimize our tax liabilities? And one of my favorite ways to do that is actually by paying for services we know for sure we're going to buy anyway with vendors upfront with preferred terms. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit maybe first about why I don't love this for why I don't actually always love gym owners offering prepaids, but why I'm a hypocrite and I like gym owners getting prepaid. But I guess I'll kick it over to you, Pete, in case there's anything you wanted to add here before we dig in further.
I like the topic. We've never talked about this before, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm fresh off of a unique prepaid scenario because when we relocated our business, with it came improved amenities and facilities for my tenants. I have a manual therapist and a PT, and my manual therapist rent went up by a certain amount of dollars, and he said, "That's great. I bet you're a little cash strapped because of the move. What if we knock 10% off and I give you a year's worth of rent right now?" And we were like, "Go, go, 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 go! Give us
Yeah.
cash. I'll buy
Yeah.
equipment."
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is fresh for
Yes.
me. It's a good topic.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting, right? Because that's another good example of a good prepaid, right? So I think before we get to why I think this is a good idea for gym owners to access prepaid rates from their vendors, talk a little bit about why I don't always love gym owners offering prepaids, right? Um, I think to my mind, there's probably three core issues. The first is if we're not good at cash management, and what a lot of gym owners do, I love you so much, you see that balance in your bank account and it's looking very tempting. And then you go out and buy a bunch of things you don't necessarily need because it's there. But the problem is you're now on the hook to fulfill these services for, if it's a year prepaid for, 12 months hence. So you still have some associated expenses with the fulfilling these services. So if that money just goes right out the door, that ain't great. So there's some cash management issues, right? I think another reason that a lot of gym owners I don't love when they do prepaid is because they completely give away the house and they come in with such a unbelievable amount of discount that they crush the average revenue per month. Even if they were to do accrual counting, which is a fancy term, it just means if they were just to split it by 12, suddenly it's so much lower than what they should be gathering for that level of service per month. And not only that, but a lot of gym owners, of course, are famously undercharging to begin with. So we're already not charging we should be. We're already not profitable. And now we're giving away even more of the margin to the point where we're, in some situations, could actually be losing money to service the client. Now, the third and final piece, I think, relates to the first one, which is that if you take this money up front, the monthly recurring revenue is a very important number for a lot of gyms, right? And what will happen is if a large percentage of your clients do a prepay, the cash flow coming in every month gets lower. Now, there's ways to mitigate all of those, but I'll kind of pull up there in case there's any other reflections or things you've seen, Pete, that you think are maybe unhelpful ways people have done this.
I'll probably just double down on something you briefly said, which is that, well, I heard Tony Robbins once say, my business will eat every dollar I feed it. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
where this comes in for me. I see gym owners collect a bunch of cash up front, and then they're like, well, I guess I need tons of new equipment. And it's a money management issue, as you've said. And
yep,
I think if you don't have a plan for what you're going to do with 12 months of revenue from someone who is going to pay you either way, and you're not particularly good at setting money aside thoughtfully, I think you're setting
yep,
yourself up for failure. Because, like you
yep,
said, most of them are giving away far too much of their margin just to say that they had a big month, and it's fool's gold.
totally,
It gives you
totally.
kind of this vanity metric, and
Yeah,
it also sets you up for what feels like failure the next year when you get your shit right and you're like, I'm never doing that again. That was not a smart play on my part. And then you get to November, you have a great November, and you're like, this November sucks. Last year I did X number of dollars, and you're really running a better operation at that point. So it's a dangerous place
yeah.
to go if you don't have a plan.
It's a dangerous game to play. Now, having said that, it is a tool and it can be used well, right? So obviously, Pete, you just gave an example of this. Where like, yeah, this is perfect. This is you're happy to give a discount on those terms because there's a reason you need the cash right now, right? So if we could get, for instance, really into the nerdery, right? There could even be a scenario where hopefully this isn't happening, but like God forbid you have some sort of like really high interest debt that it makes sense to discount just because you want to get the interest payments are such that if you can chop it down faster, that actually becomes a financial no-brainer. So we'll leave that aside as that's kind of an edge case. But more typically, if you're going to do this well, it requires just managing those three issues, which is first of all, when the money comes in, don't spend it all right away, right? Find some way to hold on to some percentage of it, find some ways to manage the cash. Number two, don't give a massive discount and make sure the prices make sense in the first place, right? So rather than giving away the house, right, make a reasonable discount and make sure that your pricing is strong enough that there's meat on the bone there that you can give away a little bit of the margin and the business still works. I should also know part of the best use of this in a perfect world, which may or may not be true here, is in theory, the other reason this becomes valuable to you is if you're getting somebody to commit for a membership that otherwise they weren't going to. Now, whether that's realistic or not is hard to say. Now, there are, of course, some people that, you could say maybe would have lost interest that they weren't on the hook at that point and had already paid for the full year. Maybe so, maybe no. So I would note that's arguably another way to do this well and an argument for this, but I wouldn't put a lot of stock into that too, as I'm not sure how often that happens. I think the third thing is if you are going to see this reduction in your monthly recurring revenue, I mean, I guess it's back to the first thing too. If you've managed your cash flow appropriately and you have the money available, so you're able to pay for fulfilling those services, then it's going to be okay. And it's not going to be quite the end of the world. I think maybe the last thing I'll say about this too is the other strategy I like here, and people that listen to the Black Friday podcast, I apologize for repeating myself, is I think the other strategy is gate this, right? Because a lot of you would benefit from the reality. It's like, listen, time value of money matters. Getting the money up front is useful for all of you, but you probably don't want to discount your entire membership base and get all that money in one lump sum. For most of you, again, just because there's a lot of temptation to spend it and not manage it well. But for most of you, if you could have, I don't know, 3, 5 memberships pay up front and it just gives you a little bit of a cash cushion going in the holiday, that also makes this also more attractive because then you're not giving away the house and you do get a lot of the benefits of some cash flow cushion without completely wrecking your monthly recurring revenue or your margins.
This is exactly what we do. So you bring up a memory
Well,
I
it must
had.
be right. We agree.
Well, we had a handful of clients who were the real ones, the ones who are going to be there for you in the long run, who stepped up during COVID and they were like, hey, you probably need some cash. How about I pay for a year up front? I had 3 or 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And well, one, I'll go to war for those people
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
they get it. But it gave a nice little cushion then, but it made me realize that we could do this periodically and we don't need it wholesale. And so
Yep.
the people who deserve it get that offer on occasion, again, if I have a purpose for it. The thing that I've seen a couple of times, that's not a couple of times, a lot of times in the years that I've been coaching other gym owners, is that more often than not, the gym owners we speak with have less space than they need, not more. And
Yep.
if they get hyper aggressive with these discounts and they fall in love with the idea of more people in the gym, they tend to put themselves in a compromised spot because they've sold all this heavily discounted training and they start pushing up against, like really pushing up against capacity issues with clients that they resent because they're so heavily discounted. And so it's just
Yeah.
not something I get fired up about. I
Yeah.
see.
I'll tell you. So I have my daughter is making her podcast guest appearance. So Cece, remember we said we weren't going to talk here, but you keep saying Mark. Can you say Mark into the podcast?
Mark.
My name is Mark. What's my full name?
Um.
Do you know my full name? Oh, I'm getting a little bit camera frame.
Dad.
Dad is my full name.
There it is.
Well, I'm going to go back to this podcast episode now.
Dad?
Yes, love.
Mark Dad.
I make the present and we put a bow on the present for you.
Okay, you're going to make a present, put the bow on the present for me?
I already made the present.
You did?
And we put the bow on the present
Okay.
for you.
Oh, thank you so much. Can you go and go grab the present with the bow on it? Thank you, daughter. So anyway, so we finally get to the meat of what we're going to suggest here, which is how you might use this as the gym owner, right? So again, let's say you have run Black Friday and a lot of money's come in, and or you've just had a very profitable year. Let me start with, I think, the bad way to do this is sometimes well-intentioned gym owners and well-intentioned CPAs would be like, oh man, you made a lot of money last year. You better spend all of it so we don't have to pay taxes. Again, this makes sense if you're actually going to buy the thing and it's actually valuable for the business. But this is a tale you do not want to let wag this dog. It is so wrong-headed to buy things you do not need for the sake. It's just lighting the money on fire anyway at that point, right? So that is something I really don't like. I don't think it's good to just like start thinking of things to buy to reduce your taxes. That's completely crazy talk. However, the reality is there are going to be things you're going to be buying in the new year, right? And you likely have any number of vendors that you like, that you are working with, that you know you're going to plan to continue to be working with them. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the Unicorn Society is an example of this. I will warn you that, again, we only offer so many of these per month for the same reason I mentioned previously, because we, as a business, we don't necessarily need it, but we don't mind occasionally if it makes your life better. We do allow some of these. We don't love to sell a ton of them for the exact same reason I talked about, right? However, if you're listening to this and you haven't been to go.businessunicorns.com/brainstorm, you could book a 10-minute call if you happen to be somebody that made a lot of money in Black Friday, or you've had a very profitable year and you've been considering signing up with us. We would be a great example of this. You're like, okay, I'm planning to sign up with these guys for a long time now. I want to sign up for the year. I have cash. It's because if you, depending on your tax rate, everyone's here in New York City, but in practice, this can save you like a lot of money, like 30%, 40%, depending on where you live and how much money you've made. So not only are you saving that on this year's tax liabilities, but a lot of places like Business for Unicorns will reduce their rates some. The smart ones won't reduce it too much, but you'll still get preferred rates. So you are saving money on taxes. You are saving money in the total investment because the total amount that you're paying over is getting lower. And then not only that, instead of the previous example where your monthly recurring revenue is lower and hurts your cash flow, this means that your monthly expenses are now lower because you paid up front. So this actually increases and improves your cash flow for the next year. Now, we should acknowledge you are robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit, right? Because in practice, really what you're doing is you're pushing forward the tax liability, right? You're not making it go away. But particularly if they're vendors you plan on using year over year, you can just kind of keep doing this eventually and keep kicking the ball down the road and keep getting these favorable terms that reduce that year's tax liabilities. And, worst comes to worst, if you have a year that's not quite as good, you can go back to the monthly payment. That's perfectly fine. Because my suggestion is quite literally think through the vendors, the people that you're going to be giving money to on a monthly basis, and have a conversation. The worst that can happen is they say no. But a lot of gym owners, you can look at your P&L. I bet you have a lot of monthly costs, large and small, of an array of different kinds of vendors who might be interested in entertaining an offer to giving you preferred rate, reducing your tax liabilities, and on their end, then they get the cash up front and they know they've got you committed for the year. So that's how I think about that. Pete, anything that you would add to that or any other contributions to my thinking on that?
It's how we would use it. I'd approach my landlord and ask if I could pay in full for for our CAM related charges. Can I pay for the property upkeep in full this year? They get it. They're all entrepreneurs as well. And the worst thing that can happen is people can say no, and then you just pay your damn taxes.
Yep. And a lot of places probably will. And I think that's okay. But remember, it just doesn't hurt you if you have this extra cash flow, if it's going to save you the money on the taxes. Because, you have everything from rent to the CAM charges. And obviously, smaller companies are usually going to play ball a little bit more. But you could, look through your booking and billing platform. If you have any tech software vendors, if you have a paid ad buyer, if you have a bookkeeper, if you have a CPA, I mean, you could literally just go through every vendor that you use and see who might be worth at least a conversation. Because worst comes to happen is they say no, perfectly fine. But if you can pay up front and save the money, you might as well do it.
Absolutely. Do it now.
All right, friends. Well, I think this is a chapter. I know this one was a short one today, but I thought this is a good message to get out there in the world. My hope is that at the time of this listening, you had a big Black Friday. If not, next year's not but 11 months away. And my hope is now you can do some money tax savvy moves with that haul. All right, friends.
If you would like to see CC return to the pod, drop a comment and we'll get her on here for a proper episode.
Yes, indeed. So hopefully some of CC makes it to that final cut, or this will be a 7-minute podcast because she was such a ghostly presence throughout.
No, listen, my kids have shown up on this podcast before. She is more than welcome here.
Yes, she's making me so human and relatable. So human and so relatable. All right, friends. Well, thank you so much. As always, appreciate you following our podcast. If you have not had an opportunity yet to give us, just click that button for the star. Give us a little review. It helps more people find out about us. And have a great day. We'll see you next time.
Take care.